Uh, Good morning. Welcome to the second day of Slovenian AI conference. This session is dedicated to the Slovenian AI Factory, or SKUI for short. I'm sure most of you know what this is about, but in case you don't, it's a large, well, for Slovenian standards at least, supercomputer dedicated to AI that is going to be built in the next years, and which will be enriched with services to make it more useful for the industry and the academia. We have two talks in this session. The first one is by Sasha Jarowski, whom most of you also know very well, who is the head of the Department of Knowledge Technologies, one of the most eminent Slovenian AI scientists, and most pertinently for this session, the technical coordinator of SKUI. He is also very fond of using AI for science, and this is what he's going to talk about today, as well as how this will be done in the context of SKUI. And then we have another talk by Gašper Slapičar, who is an expert on the analysis of sensor data and the head of ambient intelligence group at the Department of Intelligent Systems here at our institute. He will talk about the use of foundation models for sensor data, which is the state-of-the-art way of processing sensor data, and which will also be offered in SKUI. So, Sasha, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mitja, for this introduction. Please give me notice when I'm 10 minutes away from the talk.
I have a 5 minutes.
This is
It's a paper.
Yeah. Okay. So every talk should tell a story, and this is really a story of how we got involved into the AI Factory business. We are only just starting, don't expect too much, but it's an exciting project, and it is a witness to how things change very fast these days. It's really astonishing how artificial intelligence has gone from being something very, very novel to being a necessity, from being innovative to being infrastructure. And I have approached this through the prism of using artificial intelligence for science. And here at the Institute already for a couple of years, we've been thinking about AI as infrastructure for science. The AI factories really are taking this to a much larger scale and are saying, okay, AI is infrastructure for the whole of society, for all sorts of activities within society. But of course, time is very short. I need to start somewhere. I'll start with AI for science, because this is what my passion is about. But this is also how we got into considering AI as infrastructure. And it's important to note this. I mean, there's a huge difference. The Jožef Stefan Institute is large. It covers a lot of ground, and it has a so-called infrastructural program, which has infrastructural centers. And just a couple of months ago, in this very lecture room, we were going through the different infrastructural centers of JSI and what kind of support they offer for research, and of course, what kind of technology they are really providing to the researchers as JSI as a service. And I was particularly struck by one of these. This is one of the physics departments, and they had some very nice photos and a story. The technology, the services they are offering, is something that has been around for at least half a century in more or less the form in which it is being offered today. And with AI, the things that we now have to offer as infrastructure did not even exist 5 years ago. So it's a really, really breathtaking pace, and it's very much work in progress. So I'll start with talking about AI for science. So I should not spend too much time convincing you that AI for science is a good thing to do. In particular, we are developing at my department, but also in Slovenia, we have a large project within the gravity framework on artificial intelligence for science. We are developing AI methods suitable for use in science. And this includes explainable machine learning for science, foundation models for science, automated scientific modeling, and last but certainly not least, semantic technologies for open science. And then, of course, we use these AI methods to problems from many different sciences, including environmental sciences, life sciences, and material science is a topic very important for JSI because we have no less than 6 different departments dealing with material sciences at JSI. And from having these many different projects on AI for science, we have come to the need to develop AI as infrastructure for science. And in this context, we are contributing to shaping the broader European landscape, both in the area of AI for science as a research area, but also as infrastructure. So without too much, okay. Okay, let's first talk briefly about explainable machine learning for science. So explainability is very, very important in science. You know, scientists want to understand how the world works, and for this they need to be explained to explain this to themselves and to others. And in this context, we are developing machine learning methods that produce interpretable models from complex data. I should tell you, though, that today what is called explainable AI is really mostly focusing on explaining uninterpretable models and their predictions. We are talking here typically neural networks, deep neural networks, other forms. And as an anecdote, when we actually submitted the project proposal on AI for science, and it had this work package, explainable machine learning for science, one of the comments was, wait, this learning interpretable models from complex data is not explainable AI. You know, only explaining the predictions of uninterpretable models is explainable AI. So things are going to this extent, you know, the social perception of this is changing, but nevertheless, I believe explanation is really crucial for science, and therefore we need to develop explainable models, methods that learn explainable models from scientific data. And in this context, we are looking at different dimensions of complexity of the data. We can have structured inputs, we can have structured outputs. A problem that we are very, very frequently encountering today is that there is an abundance of data, but there is severe shortage of labeled data, where domain experts need to annotate the data. And methods for semi-supervised, self-supervised learning are really very popular these days. To learn interpretable models, we largely extend in various ways decision tree-based approaches, tree ensembles approaches, which can also be providing explanations in terms of variable importance. We also deal with very large quantities of data via streaming approaches. And finally, we are considering machine learning approaches that learn from data placed in context. The classical statistical assumption is that the training examples are all independent from each other, which is rarely the case in practice. Typically, they are interconnected, and this is common in relational learning. So my group has been developing methods for multi-target prediction based on predictive clustering. It's really a very simple approach that generalizes the decision tree paradigm in the lines which are shown in bold in this algorithm. We want the examples to have low variance in the targets that we want to predict. And this is not necessarily just a single target. The notion of variance is defined typically for a single continuous random variable. Here, we are extending this notion to tuples of such variables, to structured objects like hierarchies. So that's the first generalization. And the second one is actually to look at the reduction of variance according to these new, more general measures when selecting the tests to put in the root of the decision tree. And this is a very, very small changes to the paradigm of decision trees, which are very powerful and have actually led us to develop the software package Class Plus, which can handle many, many different problems within the same framework, to produce trees, produce tree ensembles, produce variable importance explanations, all sorts of things. And we have also generalized this approach for learning from data streams, although that's a separate software package. This is part of the MOA package. This approach of predictive clustering actually generalizes very nicely to semi-supervised learning in the way that the variance function is extended to take into account not only the output, the targets. So how does this work? Okay, I have to be slower. So this is the typical part in predictive modeling. You're looking at the variance across the targets, but in predictive clustering, you can also look at the variance across the inputs. And in clustering, you only have input attributes, you don't have targets. And when, for some reason, the outputs are missing, then this part of the variance of the targets kicks in, and you can take into account all of the examples, also the examples that are not labeled. Okay, so and this learning from both labeled and unlabeled data can be very, very beneficial. The performance can be drastically improved. And what is even more important, we can get interpretable models with the same accuracy. So normally it is assumed that you have a trade-off between interpretability and accuracy, and if your models are interpretable, then they are not really that accurate. But this is not necessarily the case, and we have shown this with semi-supervised learning approaches. So if you look at the middle graph here, the black curve at the bottom is a single predictive clustering tree. On the x-axis, we have different numbers of labeled examples. Of course, as the number of labeled examples increases, the performance improves. If we do semi-supervised learning, this is the red curve, you see that first you have drastically better performance, but what is more important is that this performance is now comparable with the other two curves, which are now the performance of ensembles, not a single tree, but an ensemble of trees. And so you can see that you get comparable performance with a single tree to the performance of tree ensembles. And this is also illustrated on the next slide. On the left-hand side, we have a tree which is learned from 50 labeled examples only, which is a medical diagnosis problem. On the right-hand side, we have another tree which is learned from exactly the same 50 labeled examples, but an additional 2,000 of unlabeled examples. And what you get is a tree which is first smaller. This one has 9 nodes as opposed to the 11 on the left-hand side, and much higher accuracy. So this one has 92% accuracy versus 81% accuracy here. So you can get models which are both interpretable and accurate by using the unlabeled data. And we can, within this same framework, we can consider learning from big data where the size is along different dimensions. We can have high dimensionality, and here we need to do feature ranking and selection. We can have also a large number of rows and potentially infinite number of rows. And this is what we handle with streaming approaches, where the data just keep coming, and we can't even store them, but we need to process them incrementally. And other complexities we have considered are learning trees in a relational context, where data is coming from a relational database. We don't have just a single relation, but multiple relations, interrelating objects. So this one is actually looking at people and whether they are infected with COVID, and considering their social contacts, and obviously the social contacts relational information, which is shown here in this table. I don't have time to go into more details, but I would like to mention that these ideas that we have developed within the predictive clustering framework, we are now combining them with the very popular methods these days of deep neural networks with different network architectures. Marian, who is sitting here, is working on these approaches for his PhD. And we combine these simple ideas from predictive clustering about the loss, the variance along the target dimension, but also along the input dimensions to produce end-to-end approaches for semi-supervised hierarchical multi-label classification, for example. Okay, and we have, and I will not be able to go into details here, but we really have many, many different applications of this in different branches of science. In life sciences, we have done things like predictive gene function, really at genome scale. You know that with genome sequencing, we now get really many, many genomes sequenced, but typically the functions of the genes in these genomes are not known. And this is why the problem of gene function prediction is very important. Virtual compound screening is very important for drug repurposing, drug design, relating environmental factors to biota structures, where this can also be connected to health. So everybody has a microbiota in their gut, lots of different bacteria, and the composition of this actually influences health quite a lot, or is related to health. And we have done, among other things, machine learning exercises that relate health status on one hand to the composition of the microbiota on the other hand. And most recently, we had a very nice exercise collaboration with the Chemistry Institute here in Slovenia, using machine learning to help select peptide insertion sites for the regulation of protein function. This is really very important in the context of personalized therapy. The functions of proteins need to be changed, and they are changed by inserting peptides at different sites. And at some sites, this is possible, and others less possible. So we have been applying machine learning to this problem. This I really have to skip. We don't have the time for this. I would like to mention, though, the application to materials sciences, because we do have many different departments here at JSI working on material sciences. And the design of new materials has many practically important consequences. For example, materials for energy are very important. Different catalysts, let's say, for the hydrolysis, decomposing water into hydrogen and oxygen, and getting the hydrogen for fuel cells, developing new materials which can be used in batteries. So very important in the energy context. And here we have developed a combination of machine learning on one hand, with which we predict the properties of materials from their composition and the parameters of the synthesis process. And then we have combined this with optimization approaches, where we wrap multi-criteria optimization around the model, predictive model obtained with machine learning. And then the optimization approaches actually explore the space of process parameters and compositions and suggest new materials to be synthesized, having the desired properties. Okay, let me then move to the topic which is very, very popular today, foundation models. Everybody talks about foundation models these days. Large language models are a prime example of this. And what we are doing within this AI for Science project that we have is, on one hand, fine-tuning LLMs for specific problems for which we have additional high-quality data, but we are also developing foundation models, approaches for multimodal foundation models, and using different modalities, for example, text and images. And this is very relevant to material sciences, but also to other sciences. These multimodal models will be gaining importance. A very nice example of this is in the environmental and earth sciences, where we can have multimodal foundation models from different types of remotely sensed images. So we can have images from the visual band, from radar, from other bands, and of course these are interconnected to each other. So it makes a lot of sense to have multimodal models. And we have a very nice example of fine-tuning foundation models in the area of nutrition. This is collaboration with Tome, who is also sitting here in the audience. They are Department of Computer Sciences here at JSI, together with the Department of Environment environmental sciences have collected very nice data sets, and we have tuned the Llama 3 large language model on these nutrition data sets to be able to extract food-related named entities, named entity recognition, named entity linking, classified food entities according to food taxonomies, and retrieve nutritional values for ingredients and recipes. And this also has actually a nice interface. The tasks that we solve in the end are traffic light classification of recipes. You know, is the food that you prepare according to this recipe healthy, moderate, or really you shouldn't be eating it because it's not very healthy? Assessing recipe nutrient values and making food data interoperable by extracting these named entities and linking them to ontology terms. And we don't have the time to go into details, but this is what the prompts look like. Essentially, you give the recipes and you give either the nutritional values extracted from them or the classification according to this traffic light system or the entities from the ontologies and links to them. And the bottom line is that after fine-tuning this large language model, we get much better results as compared to commercial models like Gemini. So the yellow one here is Gemini. The red one is Llama without fine-tuning, and of course the blue one is Llama with fine-tuning with these data sets. And we are better on all of these problems that I was mentioning, and you can see that by quite a large margin. And when we do, you know, not just zero shot but few shot learning, then we have better performance. And we have worked also on visual foundation models in material science, segmenting images. These ones here are really magnetic particles, and we segment these and extract the sizes of these particles and look at their distribution because this determines the magnetic properties of the material. What we are looking at next is actually multimodal foundation models, in particular visual language models. And again, I would like to stress, this is a very nice example where we have interdepartmental collaboration here at the Jože Stefan Institute. Just to very briefly mention also the other topics that we are covering here, because they are important. They are not so popular, even though, for example, finding equations from data, which we have been calling equation discovery for a while, now very famous under the symbolic regression label. This is getting popularity. The task is to find equations from data. And again, the intuition is that the equations are the language used by scientists. And really what we should be extracting from the data are models, regularities expressed in the language that scientists regularly use, and not, you know, not even decision trees, not the formalisms proposed by computer scientists. And my group has been working for a very long time on actually automated modeling of dynamic systems. Here you see we have algebraic equations. Here we have differential equations. And of course, modeling dynamical systems is very important in many practical domains for controlling these systems, for designing new solutions to different problems. And we have been looking in particular at learning not only from data, but learning from both data and domain knowledge. So here we have the task of learning from data. Here we also have domain knowledge, in particular here in the form of grammars, which are interesting because they are generative models. Today, when you talk about generative models, people always think about neural networks, but really grammars are also generative models, and you can also learn grammars, and we have been looking at that as well. And the grammars have the advantage, again, you can actually look at the grammars and the rules within the grammar, so there is some interpretability there. So this certainly is a very important approach in practice, and it's important also because it combines domain knowledge on one hand and the data on the other hand. And this is really how work in science progresses. Scientists build on the work of other people, so they don't start things from scratch. And again, we have examples of this in the life sciences, also environmental sciences. We do generative models, both grammars and actually hierarchical variational autoencoders. But I don't have the time to talk about this. And I would like to mention just very briefly before going to the AI factory part that actually semantic technologies for open science is a very important and way under explored subject. For collaborative science, we really need both the data and the models and other artifacts of science to be annotated and accessible to other scientists, but also to other machines in the context of actually automating certain parts of science. This, unfortunately, I have to skip, but I would like now to come to the broader context of actually the infrastructural aspect of using AI for science. For quite a while here at JSI, I mentioned that we have these infrastructural centers, and one of these is called RAZUM, or in Slovenian, Common Sense, is the acronym, and this is providing actually services to JSI employees. We are serving local instances of large language models. In this particular case, the data never leaves JSI. It's all run on JSI infrastructure. Here you can see we have quite a variety of LLMs that can be actually used. You can actually use several of them in parallel, pose the same question to a couple of LLMs at the same time, see what they come up with. And it also has advantages in terms of reproducibility, because you can get exactly the same results with the commercial providers. Some models can be there one day and not there the other day. And finally, for JSI employees, this is for free. You don't need a license for this. You just need a username, which you get if you're an employee of JSI. And this is really the way we got into looking at AI as infrastructure for science. This is why this was established as infrastructural center at JSI. You will notice that one of the models here is actually the Slovenian large language model, which is called GAMS, like our colleague here. But now with the advent of the AI continent plan of the European Commission, we are really looking at AI as infrastructure, not for science, but for a broader range of activities. So you see here the European approach summarized very briefly. For Europe, the regulation is very important, the fact that Europe adopted the AI Act. But on the right-hand side, you see also the more technical aspects. You see the AI factories, and you see also funding instruments for projects in the area of generative AI. There were a couple of calls that had deadlines in the past few weeks, from mid-September to now. And I have to tell you at least a little bit what are AI factories. AI factories have two main components. One component is the supercomputers, the hardware, but then the other component are the services, really the software that runs on these workflows that are implemented on top of this and can be then used by a broad range of users. And in addition to this basic infrastructure, the Slovenian AI factory and other AI factories typically have different verticals covered where prototypical applications from different areas are addressed, and we will provide nice examples for users from different areas that they can build upon to produce applications in their own areas. So the Slovenian AI factory will support the growth of the Slovenian AI ecosystem. I have to stress this because actually the concept of AI factories does rely to a large extent on a broad base of well-educated users that are capable of actually using these advanced services, including using services running on HPC infrastructure. And Slovenia has unfortunately not really invested in this area over the last decade, in contrast to the rest of the world, in contrast to other European countries. So even when we do have the HPC infrastructure and the software running on it, we will be still facing the problem of educating the users to be able to use this. And this is the ambition of the Slovenian AI Factory project. It is, as I mentioned, we have two parts. One is the supercomputer. This is really a separate project and is concerned with buying, installing, maintaining, running the hardware. Also includes covering costs like electricity and whatnot. But then there is the Horizon Europe project on this, which is really developing the software and services for running different kinds of workflows on this infrastructure. And for the AI Factory Consortium, JSI is the technical coordinator, but we do have a lot of the Slovenian scene involved. We have the major universities, University of Ljubljana, University of Maribor, we have Novo Mesto, we have the infrastructural organizations like IZUM and ARNES, and then we also have institutions that provide links to actually the economy, to industry, like the Chamber of Commerce and the technological part. Just to mention the work packages within the SLIFE project, we have the workflow and data orchestration infrastructure. This is really close to the hardware. It's looking at lower level software, things like Kubernetes and whatnot. Then we have the core AI platform, where we have generic workflows as horizontal services, and then in the verticals we will be having more adapted workflows for the different application areas. And last but certainly not least, we also have this AI skills and training. As I mentioned, it's very important to have a skilled user base that can actually use these services that will be developed within the factory. The application areas that we will cover within the factory are quite broad. We have green transition, which includes things like agriculture, also environmental monitoring, smart manufacturing. This is really broad. Then we have health and biotech. Then we have digital society, including service for the public administration. And last but certainly not least, AI for science. We actually do expect this to be very relevant to the Slovenian scientific community. And we expect many, I would say, success stories to be coming from there. Because the science circles are actually much better equipped. They are much better educated in this area. They know what HPC is. They know how to use it. So we expect actually that they will be the first to take up these services offered by the factory. And I would like to wrap up by putting these things in the broader context. It's not accidental that I was talking about AI in science. This is really more important, and it's actually quite understandable. The reasoning is very simple. Science is playing a hugely important role in our everyday lives. We may not be quite aware of that. The general public doesn't think of it in these terms, but it's actually incredible how the latest scientific knowledge now makes it into our everyday life very, very fast. Perhaps a very good example are COVID vaccines. There was an incredible science behind that to actually develop the COVID vaccines into extremely short time and to deploy this at planetary scale. Without science, this would not have been possible. And science is influencing all of these areas of life. I was mentioning new materials and energy, transport. So really, science is driving technology. Technology influences our everyday life. I don't have to tell you how mobile phones have influenced our life, other kinds of technology. And science is behind all of that. So science is really important. Science can help us address the global challenges of humanity, from climate change to whatever. And on the other hand, artificial intelligence is a very powerful technology, and it can actually help deliver better science faster. And it's really this fact now, it's so obvious that even politicians are saying it. Okay, so Europe is now developing a European strategy for AI in science, and they have been also asking for input from the scientific community. I was in two high-level roundtables. The first one was in December 24, the second one in June 2025. These were called by Commissioner Zakharieva. And in fact, these have led to developing of the concept a resource for AI science in Europe. This is really the embodiment of the European strategy in this area. And just yesterday, so this is really super hot. This was published yesterday. Okay, they were a bit secretive about it, and of course now I don't have the time to talk about this, but you should be aware that this exists, and you should go on and check this out, because this will also impact funding for AI in science. And we are very, very active in this area. For example, we organized the conference on AI for science, which included an AI factory track. This was just a couple of weeks ago here in Ljubljana. I'm also involved in the organization of the AI in Science Summit, which will be at the beginning of November in Copenhagen, Denmark. This will be really where this strategy will be officially presented in more detail by the European Commission for the first time. And again, we will have the Vice President of the European Commission, Henna Virkkunen. And by the way, AI factories are into the portfolio of Commissioner Virkkunen. So at this event, there will be a lot of talk about AI in science, about policy, but also how this is relevant to European industry. So not just the science part, but also the economy part. I'm co-editing a book on this, which will hopefully go to press by the end of the year. This event I told you, I will not tell you more, AI for science. And with this, I would actually like to thank you for your attention. And I'm open for questions. We do have at least a little bit of time.
Thank you, Sasha. Yes, please, questions. Yes, please go ahead.
You mentioned explainable AI, multimodal, interconnections, ontology. Now my question is, are you using knowledge graphs?
Of course.
Everywhere.
And knowledge graphs, we have a lot of work also in my department about actually extracting knowledge graph from textual documents. Knowledge graphs are really nothing else but databases. It's a really fancy name for databases. In the knowledge graph, you have the data in structured form, and of course the relations. I was talking about relational data. You represent the relations as graphs and you call them knowledge graphs. But yeah, the short answer is we are using this. Yeah.
Let me ask something.
There's one question behind you. And
Sorry, didn't see. Yeah, go ahead.
What is your opinion about difference between research and practical use of technology, which, let's say, I or we in engineering see today, because you could see a really nice application in research, but in practice doesn't have so much. An example would be ChatGPT, let's say. We all use ChatGPT, probably, but other technologies doesn't come so well in expert practice.
Well, the explosion of interest in large language models is because they are communicating with the end user in natural language, which they all understand. Running other kinds, and this is really important. I think it's really, really important to understand that AI is not just large language models. And not everything can be solved with large language models. Large language models have their problems, but I don't have the time to talk about this. You need to know how to use things. And the thing with large language models is you think you don't have to know. So you can just start, you open a chat window and you start typing in, and you can already interact with this. But if you don't ask your questions in the right way, if you are not really aware of the potential problems, you can run into trouble. But nevertheless, this intuitive interface is allowing a large number of users to access this. But this doesn't mean that for other areas you cannot produce practically relevant results. Let me give you a very simple example. Already 20 years ago, we were doing a system for estimating the risk of fires in Slovenia. And this was eventually in use by the Civil Protection Service, by the European Environment Agency. This was learned from data on fires in the past. And every day it was fetching the weather forecast and producing new maps of risk for all of Slovenia. And for this segment, it was perfectly useful. The problem is that many times you don't even hear about the AI aspects of different applications, or sometimes things claim to be using AI just because it's fashionable today, and there is really not much of it in the product. So we are there in the realm where it's difficult to judge this objectively, but AI is very relevant for practical use, and there are more and more applications that are really using it, and not just large language models, but other types of AI. Mitya, you had a question, and probably then we have to stop.
Anybody else has one? Okay, a quick one. So at the beginning, you were mentioning multi-target prediction.
Yeah.
And sometimes we wonder, there's obvious benefit that you have one model instead of multiple, but how does it affect performance? Is there a performance benefit? Is there a performance penalty? Is it the same?
Wonderful question. Thank you very much. I love this question. On average, the performance is much better. And the reason is very simple. There is a beautiful explanation behind it. It prevents overfitting. Even if you don't, so if you try to predict one thing, it's so much easier to overfit that one thing. The minute you want to predict one other thing in addition to that one, if you adapt too much to thing number one, then you underfit the number two. And so overall, when you need to predict a number of things, you overfit less. And this is also the same mechanism for semi-supervised learning. There were a couple of PhDs in my group on these topics for semi-supervised learning. Jurica Lebatic did a PhD on this and specifically investigated the effect why semi-supervised learning was working better than fully supervised learning. And the results were very clear. It reduced overfitting. So all of this unseen data was helping reduce overfitting. So that's the short answer. Which this doesn't mean that for, if you're predicting 5 things, doesn't mean maybe for one of them, you will get a better result if you try to predict just that one thing. But on the average, across the 5 things, you are much more likely to be better with the multi-target model.
All right. Thank you again.
Thank you all.
And now, time for Gaspar to tell us about foundation models for sensor data.
Yeah, thanks, Mika, for the introduction. And yeah, as you said, I'll talk about the foundation model for sensor data, even though the title of this presentation is kind of poetic, from pixels and tokens to hardness and brainwaves. So yeah, foundation models for sensor data. But it is really impressive what kind of titles one gets when discussing it a bit with ChatGPT, really nice. So I have another poetic one here. So the waves that shape today, but this is the last one, I promise. So yeah, as Sasha was saying, natural language processing, and as we all know, is the thing nowadays. So here I'll go briefly, very briefly, on how we got here. And as we all know, the transformer in, I think the first paper was in 2016, attention is all you need. And yeah, I can already see in some of you, please not another transformer lecture, and don't worry, I won't go into detail about those. BERT, also very well known, widely used, highly performative, and this is where we are today, right? Anything we do, basically anything, we can talk with ChatGPT about it, have it help us, have it improve the workflows, and it's basically great, right? Same thing as Sasha touched on as well, is computer vision. So yeah, in the same light, we went from Vision Transformer into some very general versions of YOLO, segment anything model from Meta. So nowadays we have models that are extremely general. We can give it basically any kind of data from a wide variety of fields, have it, segment the image, track objects, even in difficult situations. So these models are really impressive overall, both LLMs and in computer vision, but we all know this. So the question then is, why does this work? Why does it work so well? And the key is pre-training on massive amounts of data, which is usually unlabeled. And the example is basically the internet, right, on which LLMs are trained nowadays. So maybe a question for the audience now. GPT-5 versus GPT-4 and all its variants, 0.1, 0.3, 0.5, whatever. How many of you feel that GPT-5 was a substantial improvement over 0.3 or variants before? Or raise your hands. Okay, one. And how many of you feel that it's, about the same or not that much of an improvement? Okay, I think the majority, and I think this reflects the sentiment across the board, more or less. So the question is, what happened, right? Why did GPT-5 not hit the stride that we all expected? So this is a screenshot from a presentation given by Ilya Sutskever. So he is, for those who might not know, an ex-data science lead at OpenAI. And he gave a rare keynote at New Rips about 1 year ago. And it was all over the news because what he said was, well, the news articles summarized it. That Ilya said, pre-training as we know it is dead. That was the great title. And what he said is that, compute is growing, the architecture or basically the hardware is improving, but data is not, especially in NLP. So like I said, we trained it on the internet basically, so we don't have much extra stuff left. So, I'll save my judgment here, but there are definitely other domains and modalities like sensor data, which I'll talk about more here, that are not strictly NLP based. Okay, so why are we even interested in sensor data and biosignals? Well, one thing that's quite obvious, I think, that was also discussed here yesterday and on other conferences is that this kind of data are useful for many things in health. We can predict a lot of different stuff. Another thing is that large databases of this data are available. So here is an example. Mimic is a very famous database that has tens of thousands of people inside and waveforms of these people. Then we have a lot of ICU data. We have the UK Biobank, also extremely famous, has a lot of genetic data, but also some wearable data. And there are 100,000 plus participants in those data sets. And this is across the board. So we have waveforms for different sensors like ECG, PPG, Electra, encephalogram, etc. So a lot of different stuff is out there and available. So the question then is, can we just use the same recipe that was used, in NLP and computer vision and it got us to this point so that we have really good, highly performative models? There are some differences though in this data compared to text and images. So this data is often non-stationary. There can be signal artifacts, as we all know, especially if you ever collected real-world signal data. These are, horrible often. There are different devices, environments, which can influence it heavily, and this can make it sensitive to some stuff. If there are some labels, they're often ambiguous in terms of clinical semantics. And usually supervised single task models don't scale. So what we want to do, if we want to just take this idea is, I show a graph here, which is going up, which is good usually. So on the x-axis, we want to take more data, right? The data is out there. And on the y-axis, we have the model performance. But this is, importantly here, it's not just data, on a single task. This is data from different people, different sites, different devices, different environments, so varied data. As Sasha just touched upon, overfitting is a thing, and we want to avoid this as much as possible. And again, performance is not on a single variable or a single task. Performance that we're interested in is on new data, on different tasks across the board, basically for anything that we want to do. So basically the idea is, yes, let's just steal that idea, scale the learning across different cohorts, different tasks, and let's train foundation models for sensor data, right? Okay, I'll go a bit into more detail now. So as far as inputs go, The data preparation basically for training such foundation model is relatively standard for people who trained previously some, let's say, neural networks with sensor data. So some tokenization, which is common in NLP, here it's signal segmentation or windowing, which has to be done in some way that makes sense. Then different signals can be used, as Sasha also touched on. We can have, ECG, we can have PPG. These two can be synced and can augment each other. We can have different resolution inputs. Some can be, very quick changes. Some can be more long-term. Augmentations are often, always basically desired because we want that robustness to noise, different devices, etc. And we can also add some domain-specific tokens, like some information about device, site, person, etc. But like I said, here, nothing is really that special in terms of training neural networks. So relatively standard procedure, I would say. Now, I'll talk a bit more about the backbone models. So this is the core part of foundation models that we are interested in. So choosing what kind of backbone we are going to use depends often on required context length. And a common example that is a strong default, I would say, is some combination of convolutional neural networks and transformers. So to get some kind of local shape features and some temporal information. An example is the conformer architecture, so very originally named by convolution and transformer. So it's shown here on the right. And basically, it's not really that special, I would say. You have some combination of, in the conformer block, you have some combination of, fully connected layers, some transformer layers, and some convolutional. And then you have several of these blocks, and you can build a neural network this way. So this is one example that gives basically the information that we're interested in. And then if you have some context that's long sequence, so it takes a longer time, let's say between days, that something changes between days, not just from minute to minute. An example is that I've just given here are state space models. These are basically back to what we had before. So basically good old recurrent neural networks. So this was popular before transformers. But they do perform well for very long sequences. So this is an example that can be used as a backbone here. What's important to say here is that there is no cookie cutter architecture that would work always or would always be the best. Like I said, a strong default is some combination of convolutional and transformer. But other stuff and sometimes exotic stuff appears basically monthly. So one has to follow the literature in this field, I would say. Okay, so let's say we choose a backbone architecture. How do we do the pre-training then? I'll talk about two common approaches here that you've all heard of probably. The first one is contrastive learning. So the idea here, I know you've all seen the images, with dogs and cats and positive and negative examples, but I'll try to show it here on a signal example. So what we want to do is match the views that should match. That's the basic idea. And the view positives here can be, two basically parts of a signal that are corresponding to the same time. It can be even be the same signal with some augmentation. Another way to look at it is to have positive pairs in terms of person, so data from the same person, but also from the same state of that person should be closer together. And using something like info and C loss is a common idea here to pull positive pairs together, push away negatives. And here is an example of how this would be done on ECG data. So we have, let's say, two pairs of ECGs from one person and then a pair from two different people. We want those to go further apart while the same person should be closer together. So relatively standard stuff. And why this works is because it learns invariance to noise. This is the view part where we take some part of the signal and add artificial noise basically, while also encoding this person states, let's say if we're interested of the same state of the same person to be together. Another way to do pre-training is masked reconstruction. The idea here is, let's take a long part of a signal. Let's randomly mask some segments and only show some visible parts to a neural network. And then we force it to reconstruct the whole sequence. The idea here is that we want to force basically global understanding, so these long-term trends, while also forcing the network to learn short-term morphology, let's say ECG, QRS waveform, or something like that. And here there are many variants, what we mask, how much we mask, etc. Okay, now let's say somebody did this already, right? Foundation models are out there. Somebody pre-trained it for us. What do we do then? So the structure that I showed here is relatively common, I would say. So backbone, like I said, the general feature extractor where we get the embeddings, then some reshaping in the neck part, which is usually some pulling that gives us the form that we want. And then it's the predictive head, which actually does the mapping between the embeddings to the target that we're interested in. So one way to use this is called linear probing. And the idea here is just freeze the backbone, the feature extractor, get the embeddings as some kind of features and train. This is fast, stable, simple, and it's useful when we have very few labels. Another case is, like Sasha talked about earlier, fine-tuning. We can do a full fine-tune, or we can do unfreezing, layer by layer, starting basically from the back of the network. And another common approach that is popular nowadays is called LoRa, so low rank adaptation. And the idea here is to be much more efficient compared to retraining actual full layers of a neural network, which are usually large, these foundation models. Okay, again, as Sasha mentioned, multimodal models are interesting nowadays. So using different sensors, and moreover use also LLMs alongside sensor data. So an example would be, let's talk to a model, a foundation model, and let's say describe where arrhythmic episodes happen and what are the signs, ignore motion noise. An example of this is very recently published Sensor LM by Google. And the idea here is they trained, again, a foundation model on a very large amount of data from sensors. I'll go very briefly through the main idea here. The question is, how did they get the connection between the text and the sensors, actually? And what they did was they had like this 3-level description of each sensor part, and they had some statistical features, which were like heart rate variability, some structural features, etc. And they had basically this tool that prepared templates, short textual templates based on these features, which were very rule-based. So let's say if heart rate lower than 60 and heart rate variability is such, then this is some text. So they had this rule-based, and this allowed them to get basically millions of sensor window short textual description pairs. And then on top of this, they trained then obviously an encoder and a language model, where the idea was to match basically these textual descriptions to these short segments of the signals. So here is an example of how this works from their paper. So let's say we have data from a wearable where we have a lot of stuff, a lot of signals, and then we had biking and sleeping. And here the top description is ground truth. Then they compared this to Gemini 2.0 and their model. And the idea is that basically their model says something like, biking was detected between minute X and Y, walk was detected between Z and Q, etc. And this is extremely precise and works well basically out of the box. So basically talking to the model, asking it about what happened when it happened in the sensor data. Okay, so going back to Ilya and his famous talk. So pre-training, as we know, it will end, he said. The reality is that, compute is growing, but not everybody is Google and OpenAI. But like Sasha said again, we do have Slovenian AI Factory coming up. So, compute is growing for us as well. Another thing is data is not growing, and Ilya was talking about NLP here, but sensor data, as we saw, is out there, so there is potential, so why not do this? And again, another reality check here is that if one needs to go out and search for this stuff, many of these biosensor foundation models that I talked about exist already. So for stuff like PPG, ECG, EEG, etc., this stuff is out there, you will find it, and basically you can use it as it is. The goal is then, let's take what exists, offer them as a service to the community. Let's use the AI Factory. This will be our part in it as well, what we're interested in. And then, develop new ones. If we have great ideas, fine tune, and go from there. So thanks, everybody.
We don't have much time, but 1 or 2 quick questions we can afford.
Where will your sensor data come from?
The one that we're working with currently is online available data sets. So stuff like Mimic, UK Biobank, if that were to be available. I know that's difficult to access.
Local sources?
We do have some, some that we collected ourselves. I would say a good place to start is existing data because it's standardized, it's huge, etc. But then add your own data as well, because this gives it robustness to real world, let's say. I think that helps as well. So adding what we have, the data sets that we have here, And if those that we will find, I think makes sense. Yeah.
Well,
And dashboard for very insightful presentation. So basically the idea of foundation models is let's capture some general trends, let's say data related to health or whatever, body functions in general, right? But as we know, there are a lot of interpersonal differences regarding body functions. So how would you account for that?
Yeah, one way, like I was talking about briefly, is when you're doing this pre-training of this kind of foundation models, I think taking into account, person information. So if you have data that is, from which person it comes, even though you don't have a label for arrhythmia or whatever, use this as some kind of weak supervision and force the model that it learns, this kind of data belongs to this person specifically, so this person is unique, or how is it different from another person? Because I agree with you, I think it's seen often in real world cases that stuff that works on, a data set is often overfit on that data set. And as soon as you bring an actually new person or do something like a one subject out evaluation, it often doesn't work, while doing some, calibration, I would say, with this person helps. But I think, getting as much data as possible from a broad population, forcing the pre-training to, learn person-specific stuff would be the way to go, and hope that you cover as much, variety in the population as you can.
Do we have another question?
A quick comment, if I may. This issue of pre-training, as we know it, is dead. There is no data anymore out there. I think the major direction of new development is to learn not only from data, but also from domain knowledge, and combine learning and reasoning. And LLMs are already starting to include reasoning capabilities. I think really that's the next direction. I mean, I was mentioning this in the context of learning these models of dynamical system from data, but it's, I think, generally applicable. We really need to build on existing knowledge. Just extract everything from the data, I don't think is really feasible, and we need to actively involve humans in this process, and this human-machine collaborative process will be becoming more and more important.
Yeah, I agree. I would even say that this sensor LLM from Google, this was partly addressed because the templates that they use, were basically expert knowledge in some sense. So they said, if heart rate something and heart rate variability else, then say this. And this is already, some knowledge that they inserted into that allowed them to go this way.
All right. So let's thank Gaspar again. With this, we conclude the special session on SKUI2. And now we get to the regular programming. We have 3 more papers, and I give the word to Axel, who will be chairing the continuation of this session.
Yes, thank you. So we continue to session 8.
Online or what?
Ja, dan ga ik spreken.
Okay, ja, nee, c'est.
Ja, ik moet dat dit paar zelfs.
Good morning. My name is Jan, and I'm presenting the paper we conducted on the pollinators to understand vibrations using neural networks. So the pollinators are important for the farming and, of course, for the ecosystems. And in the recent years, there was a decline in their populations. So monitoring with their populations is important, and we focused on one way of monitoring. Usually, the monitoring is done with other methods, so by cameras or by actually monitoring their habitats. But we decided to try it if it's possible to determine their presence on the flower by measuring the vibrations of the stem. So that was our setup. The stem was equipped with a reflecting coil, and then the laser vibrometer detected the vibration using Doppler effect and interference. So it detected and determined the frequency of vibration. And because the data set had to be manually labeled, it was also recorded on the camera, so the researchers, our colleagues, knew actually which pollinator was present on the flower. So the samples were collected last summer, and the annotated portion consisted of about 14 hours of recordings, of which 3 hours were labeled as the presence of insects. So the insect actually touched the flower or the stem in some way. And here are two examples. This is the honeybee foraging on the flower, and that's only the light wind blowing, which is considered negative sample. So the data was first sliced into shorter samples, so 1 second length, and they were converted into Mel spectrograms with a range to up to 3 kilohertz. So we used those Mel spectrograms as 64 by 64 input in our model. And here we can see that we had mostly flies, and honeybees and wild bees, and a little less samples from other insects. So we had a total of about 7,000 positive instances. And then we also added about 8,000 negative instances by slicing the negative parts into 1 second fragments. We made a convolutional neural network with residual blocks to keep the some features between the layers, and we went for the minimal model, so it can be applied on the edge devices because it consumes quite a little power. For example, this would be like ResNet 3, and for the comparison, ResNet 34, which has 44 res blocks, would run at about 5 frames per second on Raspberry Pi 5, for example, for face recognition. So this is really lightweight model, and it can be used on edge devices. We used Adam Optimizer and cross entropy loss, which are quite standard for the training process. And to prevent overfitting, we used a dropout of 0.5 in the last layer, batch size of 16 and 30 epochs of training. And we obtained the results. So on the training data set, which was split, so 1 second long samples, we got this baseline results. So accuracy about 87%, and also precision about 85, which is quite good for the small data set we had, because this was only feasibility study, so we can see if it will be possible to do it, so we can we know if it's feasible to conduct further studies. And then for the real test, we decided to go for the whole 10-minute samples we had. So full 10 minutes recording, uncut, and we used 1 second long sliding window, which shifted 10 times. So, I mean, with 1.1 second step. So we get the samples and compare it to the labels annotated by our colleagues. And then we can apply also the heuristics. So if it's 1.1 second positive and the other negative, it's probably a false positive. So the baseline without the heuristics, so directly from the model, was about 80% accuracy and 4% precision, which is not very good. And it's also important to mention that in the full recordings, as I said before, it was 14 hours of recordings and only 3 hours were positive. So the negative samples in this case prevailed, which is the cause of the difference between accuracy and precision. By using the heuristics, so by taking longer periods and determining the averages and how high the percentage the model's prediction actually was, we managed to get the precisions for almost 70% and accuracy of about 86%. And show you an example. The upper graph shows the raw detection. So direct model output, if it's above 50%, it's marked as positive, and if it's below 50%, it's marked negative. So you can see that there are many spikes in between the labels. Oh, the labels are that yellow lines. Which are, I mean, it's the same graph as the lower one. So the positives are these yellow labels here. So you can see that there are many false positives very short. And by using the heuristics, we were able to cut it down to only the true positives. So you can see that here is one true positive and without spikes down to the false negatives. And this way we improve the accuracy of the model. So this was my presentations. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
Oh, questions?
Yes.
Two questions. So first, I'm interested why you used a MEL spectrogram, because if I understand correctly, that's related to like human hearing. And the second question related to this one is, why did you use, if I understood well, an image representation of a spectrogram as input to the model rather than some other representation?
Well, for the first question, we tried other spectrograms, and MEL spectrogram showed the best results. I guess because that
may jump in. Funny enough, it's a couple of months ago, the colleague from MIT was defending his PhD thesis on acoustics, exactly the same question. Why use MEL spectrograms instead of some other thing? It works, that's the thing. It works great. Other things, for some reason, do not work as good. So if it's not broken, don't fix it. So that's very straightforward, although maybe it's not the most obvious one. Okay, Ajahn, please continue.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, it showed the best results because we tested some two other options, and then for the for the input, the ResNet models are known for their performance on the image classifications. So that was I mean, the obvious choice to start with, because this, as I said, this is a feasibility study, and if the results were as well will be promising, because we've seen they are, we can continue and develop some other methods. But this is the simple method which was used many times, and we started with it. So not to do too complicated stuff at the beginning to find out that it doesn't work.
Yeah, sorry, hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can I jump in for the second question? So it's not really a spectrogram image. I remember Junos asked this question last year as well. Yeah, so no, because image is just a 2D array, right? And spectrogram is also 2D array. So it's not, they're the same, but they're not, you know what I mean? It's not really an image, but if you look what an image is, it's just 2D array of numbers, and this spectrogram is also 2D array of numbers. So we don't compute spectrogram, create an image, and then extract image and digitalize it back. We just, what we get when you compute spectrogram is 2D array, which is also what you get with image, just that image is usually has 3 channels and this has only 1. So they're essentially this, we're not using it, they're essentially the same.
Thank you, David. Yes.
So if I understand correctly, the whole study was considering the problem as a binary problem.
Yes.
Classes for linear present.
Yes.
But in your paper, you give labors, expert classification into more classes, don't you? So I was wondering why was that prepared like in that sense? Why it was not
because we were, if that binary classification would be successful, which it was, we are already proceeding with the classification of insect directly. So not only to determine whether the insect was on the flower, but also try determining which insect was, and the results are already promising. But this was not covered in that paper.
But you are working on that.
Yes, yes. And also it's for the binary classification, it's also useful to know how the data set is, which insects are mostly present, because if we only had flies, we cannot know whether it would be a good model to determine the presence of, bees or hoverflies or anything else. Mm-hmm. So this model is probably the best for the most prevalent samples, which were flies, honeybees, and wild bees.
And do you think this you install your device at one place, right? One plant.
Yes.
Is this representative enough? Because maybe it's for other plants. And
we had about 9 or 10 different species of flowers. But the measurements were conducted on different flowers of each species, so it's not only one flower.
And all these different places, this was all considered in
Yeah.
Okay. If I may comment a bit further, the plants, the flowers were selected on several criteria to be as representative as possible of what is blooming at the given moment, which was summer last year. So there are flowers like chicory, Navadny Putroshnik, the blue flower, which is like one flower, or there was Kubulnitsa, which the English name, which is kind of the big thing with lots of small, and each of them is behaving differently. And there were many things in between. So what we actually planning to do next is to see there are different types of flowers, like small flower, big flower. If you look at the sunflower is big and bulky, it's probably going to behave very differently just from the physics perspective if something lands on it. The next iteration of model is to try different individual types of flowers, optimizing for pollinators, but this was just the general approach to see if it works. So work in progress, but promising results.
Any further questions?
I'm curious about the actual sensing because it's a little exotic approach. Can you say a few words more about how this actually works?
Yes. So
There's some laser, but what exactly did it do?
yeah, there was a metal pole attached to the flower, so the larger vibrations because of the wind or something wouldn't put the reflective foil on the top. So below the flowers. So if I show on this image, the foil would be around here, and the stem was attached a bit lower than this to the metal pole to prevent the foil going outside the range of the laser. So the laser actually, I mean, mostly measured the smaller vibrations, not the larger slow oscillations of the flower.
So the laser measured the distance and
no, it's a laser vibrometer. Which
okay.
works
So
by,
what is that?
yeah, it works by splitting the beam, and then one beam is used to reflect from the foil. And because of the Doppler effect, if the flower is moving, the frequency changes, and then the two waves back at the vibrometer interfere, and then from the bits it computes the actual speed, which is in case of our vibrometer up to 6 meters per second.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? Yes.
A short one that's similar to Jonas's, but from the other end. You kind of addressed it already, but the model you use, yeah, it's ResNet. And again, the argument could be it works for you, it's a standard approach, makes sense. Did you consider or will you investigate other models as well? Because, you know, here there are infinite possibilities basically, but also I was curious, one parameter that I saw, well, all the hyperparameters are, you know, kind of esoteric. But you picked, let's say, just 30 epochs for training. Why did you pick like such a low number? Did it like stop improving or?
Yeah, it stopped improving. So that was for our data set. I think that it was the most optimal way because the dropout only was in the later layers. There was a danger of overfitting the first layers. So we stopped at the 30 epochs because the loss didn't improve much from there.
But was this like fixed? Did you just say 30 epochs or did you use some, you know, early stopping and just stop whenever it stops improving?
We tried a bit of different epoch counts. I mean, we exported the model at different epoch counts and we decided that the 30 epochs was the most optimal number. Any other questions? Then thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Are you next? Do you want to go? Can you hear me? We can't hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, we can. Can you share your screen?
Yeah, I want to share the screen. So could you stop your sharing screen?
Oh. Yeah. Can you share now? Okay.
Wait a second, please. I can't.
We saw it
before.
saw it, but now we don't. Will you not share your screen now? Ria, you are muted as well, I believe. Aha, okay, now we can see.
Can you see my slide?
Yes, we can see your slide, but it's vertical. Can you make the slides full screen maybe?
But I want to use the tool for presenter, but I cannot use it for the.
Oh, of course. I think this is fine then, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so that presentation. And I will present the development of a lightweight model for detecting sanitary beavers for edge deployment. And first, the background. As you know, bees are very important pollinators for humanity. And this is supported by many facts. And because of this importance, efficiently monitoring and protecting bee activity is very important. And we focus on passive acoustic monitoring, PAM, as the monitoring method. PAM means the monitoring activity using passive acoustic signals captured by sensors. And compared with the manual monitoring, PAM enables non-invasive continuous wide area observation. And collected audio is useful for colony protection or pesticide application timing. And there is already a lot of work for on PAM and AI analysis of B audio obtained through PAM. For example, in PAM, the microphone is placed near a nest box like the left figure or near flowers like right figure. And AI is commonly used to analyze such B audio. For example, SVM classified colony condition at 97.9% accuracy, and I think this was the presence or absence of a queen. And ResNet 9 also achieved the F1 score 95.4% for buzz detection. And our work based on this work. And when combining PAM with AI-based acoustic analysis, edge computing is one practical approach. In cloud computing, all recorded audio from the microphone is uploaded and inference is run in the cloud. And this raises issues such as the continuous high volume uploads or privacy risks in uploaded audio, since the audio sometimes contain human voices. And in edge computing contrast, on-device inference is performed on the edge devices from the captured audio, and only the results, which is buzz or no buzz in this study, are transmitted. And this reduces communication load and privacy concerns and makes the wide area deployment possible. Therefore, for implementation, we want to use the edge computing architecture. So our research question is following. Under edge constraints, how far can we shrink model size while maintaining a practical F1 score? By edge constraints, we specifically mean memory constraints, not battery or not latency. And our goal is to clarify the trade-off between model size and accuracy under a memory constraints. And prior work mainly focuses on achieving high accuracy, and few studies assumed edge deployment. As I said, we base our work on the paper that used ResNet 9 for buzz or no buzz detection. But the ResNet 9 is about 26 megabyte, whereas some microcomputer units have less than 2 megabyte of memory. And left one is 256 kilobyte, and right one is 2 megabyte. So this makes direct deployment of ResNet 9 very difficult. Now I will introduce experimental setups. First, about the dataset used in the study. We use the same dataset as prior work, and audio is recorded around nesting boxes of solitary bees, and audio was collected from 3 locations, and it was split into 4-second clips and labeled with buzz and no buzz. And the recordings are band limited to 50 to 1450 Hertz, and then converted to Mel spectrograms. And the left one is the Mel spectrogram of buzz, and right one is no buzz. And we use 2 evaluation protocol. And first one is the cross-validation, and CV, where we use 5-fold cross-validation. And second one is LOLO, leave one location out, where we train the model on 2 locations and evaluate them on the remaining location to verify robustness. And next, I will introduce the models used. First, I use ResNet 9, which is the baseline from prior work. While it achieves very high accuracy, it's not suitable for the edge devices. And second one is MobileNet V2. This is a lightweight edge-oriented CNN proposed by Google. And third one is the VNet, which is a more smaller CNN model than MobileNet, since MobileNet is more than 8 megabyte. So it cannot fit on the very small microcontrollers like 256 kilobyte, as I showed you before. And VNet is comprised of 3 to 5 layer CNN and using depth-wise separable convolutions, which was proposed in the MobileNet paper. Next, I will introduce the model compression techniques. Here, we use quantization. The idea is to replace high precision values with a low bit width. And in this study, we converted the value from float 32, which is 32-bit, to int 8, which is 8-bit after training. This can cut memory roughly 4 times and speeds up edge inferences. And then we also use pruning. The idea of pruning is to delete parameters that contribute least. We use structured filter pruning by L1 norm. So I drop the convolution filters with small L1 norm, like the figure attached. So this has 4 filters, and one of them is removed. Yeah, and our pipeline is first train the model and then prune the model and then retrain the model to recover the accuracy. This also contributes to cutting model size. And here are the results. And the x-axis is the memory size, and the y-axis is F1 score of cross-validation. And the circle denotes the non-quantization, and the square denotes the quantization models. And the small number near each dot indicates the pruning ratio. Larger means more pruning, and 0 means no pruning. And the palette front is connected by lines. We can see that for larger models, like the mobile net or ResNet, pruning makes little difference in performance. In contrast, for very small models like BNet, the pruning degrades performance. And unpruned setting often lies on the parent front, like this. And LO results are essentially the same. Since the LO is more difficult task due to the difference in distribution across locations, overall F1 score is lower than CV, but the Pareto relationship holds. And in the paper, in the table, you can see some results of some experiments. And when you see first row, which is baseline, and third row, you can find that we can achieve 15 times compression with only 2 drops in F1 score. And when you see fourth row, you can find that we can achieve 400 times compression with 4% drop of F1 score. Now, this is the conclusion part. We developed lightweight CNN models for burst and no burst detection, assuming edge deployment. To our knowledge, this is the first systematic comparison of lightweight CNNs in the BPAM context. As a result, we can clarify the trade-off between model size and accuracy and shows that edge sides B burst detection can reach practical accuracy. Next, we will move towards the development in real environment and validate on more diverse datasets. Okay, and this is the reference. And now this is the Q&A session. So please feel free to ask any questions. And since I'm an English learner, so I asked my co-authors to help with the Q&A. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Audience? Yes, Kashmir.
So yeah, you did quantization to from 32-bit or whatever to 8-bit. 2 questions here. First, how does the performance change when you're decreasing basically the amount of bits that you're using? So from 32 to, I don't know, 16 to 8. And I saw, well, 8 still performs close to 32 actually. Could you go further? Could you go to 4 bits?
Yes. So yeah, in theory, some models, I have seen models quantize to smaller numbers, including 3 bits and even 2-bit models. However, at very small quantizations, generally the performance drops quite low. Here in the results, we can see that for the very small models, the quantization also causes a little bit of a performance drop. However, generally, quantization to 8 bits or so has been, I mean, we have noticed that it seems to be very reasonable with small performance drops, while making the model 4 times smaller in comparison with a floating point one is still a very, I think, very noticeable improvement.
Yeah. The library I used for quantization doesn't support the int 4-bit quantization or 2-bit quantization, and I implemented the int 4-bit quantization by myself, but it showed very huge drop in F1 score. So yeah, so I think the int 8-bit quantization is the best for maintaining the high accuracy. Yeah, this is the answer.
I don't have any experience with quantization, so my question may be perhaps a bit naive. But you mentioned that you trained the model and then did the quantization.
Hmm.
I'm wondering, is this the usual approach? Would it make sense to do it the other way around? Why yes, why not?
Well, this is the usual approach. Generally, models are first trained and after that quantized. So generally, I would say that basically the idea is that because models have a lot of parameters, if we lose precision on any of these parameters, it should not particularly, it should still perform reasonably similarly. Now, sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Yeah, so I mean, you could also
what will happen? Yeah,
train
of course.
on already reduced.
An interesting thing would be to also train on already reduced data set to see the comparison. We have not done that yet, but that would definitely be a very interesting experiment. I have seen also in literature that some people also do retrain after quantization for a small number of epochs usually, just to kind of fix any kind of outlier mistakes that the model might produce because of quantization. So yeah, that is something that we maybe should look into and we'll consider it.
I don't know. Maybe it's already been established that it's a bad idea. I just don't know.
Yes, I cannot confirm or deny that yes.
Yeah, sorry. I think it's more for a practical reasons, because usually you have the big model and you want to downsize it to deploy it. So you start with the big already trained model, and you don't have to do the full training again. I think it's more for a practical reason.
Yeah, I'm not sure how training quantized models would behave actually, because I suppose that it would be an interesting thing to do, but yeah, I really can't answer. Any other questions?
And I have one just out of curiosity. These labels bus and no bus, what do they mean exactly? Were you near a colony? Like,
yes. So yeah, this is the whole idea here, right? We are trying to detect when a bee or some other insect flies near the microphone. So the idea is that basically we want to, for example, if we want to know how many bees in certain area are, we can just count the buzzes that fly by, and then we can, using some from that we can basically kind of approximate the number of insects in the area. So yeah, basically the buzz, no buzz labels is literally, is there an audible buzz in the current audio? So like, yeah, we have 4-second clips. If there is if most of the clip is a buzz sound, then we consider that currently something is flying nearby, right? So basically this is present or not present any insect.
Maybe in light of semi-supervised, self-supervised, etc. learning that we discussed a couple of times, how did you label buzz, no buzz manually?
Yes.
Just to comment here. So this data set that we're using, this was a part of the study where actually it was citizen science experiment where we had people installing the microphones. A big part of this data was labeled manually just by listening, because it's very easy to listen. Unless there is a car driving at the same time, then you don't have it. The second part, as additional confirmation, was that we also recorded by video for like half an hour or something at one of the locations, and then we can inspect both by audio and by video, and there we can actually estimate how far the microphone is still picking up the buzzing sounds. So we have like multi-level variation, but yeah, it was all supervised learning, because for that we need to do it with the supervised. Once the algorithm was proven to be working well, then we had some recordings that we did not label, and we just processed the whole thing to see, let's say, general activity of bees at nesting boxes. But what Rion's showing is mostly because in this first study, everything was, the protocol was you take the microphone, which is kind of USB stick, you record it, in the evening you transfer the data to the server, the cloud, and then we would process it here at our computers. But if you use it on Edge, then you skip a couple of steps and then you're just getting the raw result. So I'd say in a way with bigger models, we're kind of, let's say, going the opposite direction, even with the LLMs, like what we were presenting some time ago. I think last year, the idea was, yes, we can use, let's say, LLM to do some tasks, but what if we go to a smaller LLM? Because it's running on less constraints. So this is kind of the direction we're trying to go, to get as compact models as possible for the tasks that you don't need something very big like ResNet-9, because you can do it with the smaller scale because it's a dedicated task.
I would also like to mention two things. First of all, I would like to kind of imply that this kind of work is what electoral science kind of is, because this kind of data is very useful for biology research and so on. And at the same time, I would also like to no, I'm sorry, I got confused. I'm not sure what I would want to say. But yes, no, I remember the smallest of the convolutional networks that we use. I think it's called BNet3, the smallest one that we have developed. Actually has around only 6,000 parameters, which is like comparing to ResNet, which has millions of parameters. I think is very impressive that we still get very good performance.
And my point on this was just that, if in the future you get thousands of mod recordings and you don't have people, who will actually check if there was buzz, no buzz, you could find some way, to automatically detect, I don't know, some frequency components or some,
yeah, we have a couple of ways to start to do some labeling automatically in some way, right? But it's not very precise yet. And yeah, like for that, some sort of contrastive learning would be probably a great choice. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we could look into for the work. Yeah. Okay, anything else? No? Please, thank you for your questions.
Hey, thanks.
And now we have David. The floor is yours.
Okay. So you see the correct screen now?
We only see the part of it, just the top left corner.
Really?
Did you go into full screen?
Yeah, I did. Wait, let me. Wait, I'll try to change the browser. Just a second.
If I'm zoomed in.
Oh yeah, sorry. I zoomed in the remote screen sharing because David, I think you can share your screen and maybe then I can do it. And it is showing. Okay. Yeah, only is good. solved. Yeah, from there.
So sorry, so you see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so you see the correct screen, right? It's not the presenter mode.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, hello everyone. So this study is the study on the first technical step towards creating an AI-based anomaly detection tool for forest biodiversity monitoring using acoustic and satellite data. So forests are complex ecosystems and they are increasingly affected by climate changes, diseases, pests, and these disturbances need to be detected early. And so our goal with this pilot study is to determine or explore if machine learning or in our case specifically variational autoencoders can help this detect these anomalies, and if we can use them to build system for automatical and continuous anomaly detection. And so this is the tool that we're developing. It's called BET, Biodiversity Assessment Tool. It includes passive acoustic monitoring data. This captures a local biological activity like pests and birds, and also satellite Earth observation data, which provides like landscape level vegetation and moisture indices. And so we use machine learning to analyze both data and to detect anomalies. And also why we use, in our case, variational autoencoders is because it's unsupervised learning and the models learn the baselines. And so if anything unusual happens, it stands out and this is detected then as anomaly. And so this is the overview of the tool. Currently, we have pipelines split. So for audio data and satellite data, the audio data, we use audio mode devices. And for satellite data, we take Sentinel-2 images. It records 12 or 13 filters, but we take the NDVI, which is green as vegetation index, and the MI, which is the moisture index. These are by far the most indicative of what we want to detect. And so in the end, we have some aggregation, some majority voting for the final decision for anomaly. And so for this study, we used data from Dierenhaven forest in Denmark. It's a human managed forest. And so our data spans from April to June. We have 10 audio mode sensors that are placed here, as you can see on the image with red pins, and also the Sentinel-2 data. From this period, from this 3-month period, we were able to get 18 cloud-free snapshots. And so we cut the snapshots into smaller patches. And so we had around 400 NDVI and around 100 NDMI. Why the difference in numbers is because the resolution is for the resolutions differ. and we always took the same area, so 160 meters times 160 meter patches. Now, importantly, no anomalies were observed. That's why this study was focused on training, learning ecological baselines. And so we had so the audio mods recorded 45-second audios every 5 minutes, and so we had around 200,000 from this 3-month period, and we extracted 10 ecoacoustic indices, all of which are designed to monitor biodiversity. And so we performed cross-validation for model evaluation. We evaluated the model using mean square error and mean absolute error. Very similar story for the satellite pipeline. And here we also see how the images were cut using these grid lines. So the left is the normal RGB image, and then the greenness and moisture filters. So as mentioned before, we used variational autoencoders because this is unsupervised learning. And so the model gets input data, it compresses it, and then in latent space, it has some epsilon to induce some variance, and then it reconstructs data. And now when the model learns this ecological baseline, now when anomaly occurs, the reconstructed data will be poor compared to the baseline. So this reconstruction error will be high. And this is this creates high anomaly score, and this is how anomalies are detected. Of course, this works under assumption that there's, let's say, below 10% of anomalies. And so this is our data. Colored are audio indices, and black and gray are the satellite indices. Now there's a gap here in audio indices because we had some issue with memory cards of the audio mods. But so the purpose of this image, so this is all smoothed data, so that's why we don't see day and night cycles for the audio data, because the purpose of this image is to see trends. And for the satellite data, we see trends in vegetation, in moisture, starting from April onwards. This is because in April, nature was not as green as a few months later, whereas for audio data, we don't see any strong trend, and this is because in April, animals are already very much active. This is all expected and normal. And so these are results for the audio variational autoencoder pipeline. So all of the acoustic features are scaled between 0 and 1. So these total errors are really low. There are two exceptions, two features that have higher errors. This means that they're probably not that good as indicating for indicating anomalies, because they already vary quite a lot. And so for the image errors, so why I show the whole patches, so per pixel level errors, this is just to see that there is no, the error is uniform across the whole patch. And so here again, each pixel is normalized between 0 and 1, so the 7 and 9.6 errors are again really low. And so basically this means that we can reliably use autoencoders to model ecological baseline for both acoustic and satellite data. And so for the future work, we are extending our data collection. We're still collecting the data in that same forest. We're extending to other forests. And we're also upgrading our pipeline because we have to keep in mind that baselines are site-specific and time-dependent. Some area in the forest where it's around pond, for example, the vegetation will be naturally more green than compared to some drier area. Same with seasonality. In early spring or in fall, the forest will naturally not be as green, even if there are no diseases there. Yeah, and finally, our plan is to integrate both modalities together, and also after, because now we had human managed forest, which so there are people there that take care of it, so we didn't no diseases actually developed, but in the future forest, when we get diseases, we'll also be able to calibrate anomaly thresholds with expert opinion. And with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
David, do we have any questions? David.
Yeah, one question here. Yeah, as you said, you're doing unsupervised learning and basically anomaly detection, but you used variational autoencoders, which is fine. Have you considered, or will you in the future compare this to something very traditional, like, I don't know, even clustering?
Yeah, we did, but we can only we cannot directly compare it because current data we don't have any labeled anomalies, so we cannot measure performances in terms of accuracy. We can only measure performance in terms of, in this case, reconstruction error. And so we did train isolation forest. We get somewhat similar results, I think, for top 20%. When you get anomaly score, if you take top 20 percentile as anomaly, then I think autoencoders and isolation forest agree in around 80%.
Any other questions? I have one from the practical point of view. How would these diseases, these anomalies, show in your data? Like high humidity, low moisture, I guess, like, do you have any samples for that?
Yeah, thank you for this question. So when diseases appear, this immediately shows as reduction in biodiversity. So animals go to other parts of the forest. And also, this is with the gap of usually 1 week. Vegetation gets more brown. It's not as green anymore. And so you see from satellite, you can see a patch of browner part of the forest, which indicates some sort of disease.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we can conclude this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, there is one more session after the break. Only 2 papers and the very important announcement of the best paper award.
Like, look, where is it? Ah, sorry. Ja, mislim, da naš efekt, je tako, tež verjetno.
Želite ti pošiljamo reference za postove?
Jaz sem prvi avtor, side project proposal, ki ga imamo. Še je, ne vem.
Bom govoril še z Junoš.
Okay. To lufto vse skupaj, ne? Ampak v resnici bomo razmislili. Šel reče. Pa seveda čim več takih, ki so iz industrije pripravljeni, tam pa to paše, tole malo. Zdaj boljša ponudba hrane bi tudi tam skozi. So anything between the
L'ultimo da amici. Cara, hai paura che c'è la parliamo, sto vedendo. Senta così, quindi non si può scoprire. Quando c'erano qualche sera, dopo arrivato il suo facciamo. Quello più bene che si invece un item è parte Ragazzi, vedere ok, sono di potere
Set up. Right? Organic form. You're right. Sharing screen, all right. So. Good job.
Hi.
Fantastic. Okay. Sorry, like, thanks. Got this.
Improve the presentation. That is so far. I'm sure we will remove this. Right? You probably see it in moment.
Yeah.
Especially because this is.
I like it that well. Me too.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome everybody to the second section today and the last one on this SKUI of this year. So we have two papers in this session, and we'll start with Jordan, who already prepared his presentation. So Jordan, these co-authors will speak about landscape-aware selection and constraint handling techniques in multi-objective optimization.
Thanks. So this is work I did in conjunction with Rana Dova, Paolo Forever, Republic, and Tushar and Bogdan Pulic. The content's pretty straightforward. So we have introduction, background, methodology, results, and discussion section. Real-world optimization problems are often multi-objective, constrained, expensive in that they often use simulators, resource expensive per one. They're often also different. So therefore, picking the right solver is crucial. On the right here, we have an image of an electric motor, which our group optimized, and it's an example of one of these multi-objective constraint problems, which is also run on a simulator. To the background. So what is an optimization problem? On the left here, we have the most simple sort of example of an optimization problem, which is single objective. On the x-axis, we have the single x value, and then on the y, we have the function value. And we see that there's a single optimal point here. Increasing difficulty, we then have multiple objective optimization problems. These are with multiple objectives, let's say. On the x-axis here, we have in the middle, which we have F1, and then on the y-axis, we have F2. And this creates a proto-front, which is the optimal set of points. And these are trade-off points between the two objectives. Increasing further in difficulty, we then have constrained multi-objective optimization problems. As you see here, we have the original Pareto front, which is cut with a constraint. The Pareto front then sits on this constraint. So these are the problems that we dealt with, the constrained multi-objective optimization problems. They're formulated as such with multiple objectives and one or more constraints. There are two spaces that we analyze constrained multi-objective optimization problems. These are the feature space and the performance space. So in the feature space, we have features which we use to describe the problem. There are three groups of features for describing CMOPs. The multi-objective landscape group, the violation landscape group, and then a combination of the two, which is the multi-objective violation landscape group. On the right, you see an example of a landscape. So a feature on this might be, this is in two dimensions, by the way, so you can see the landscape. A feature might be the roughness or the multimodality of the landscape. And these are called exploratory landscape analysis features. In CMOPs, there are 80 such features, which we use in our study. So then to the performance space, we have the performance indicator, which is used to measure the performance of an algorithm or a set of points. The ICE CMOP is the indicator proposed by Vodopia from user 7. It monitors performance across three spaces. So the first is constraint violation. Actually, I'll describe these plots. So on the left, we have where all solutions are infeasible. You see this is the Pareto front, this line here, it's a Pareto front. And in the shaded areas are the constrained regions. So the first stage is when all solutions are infeasible. Second stage is when all solutions are, or when there are feasible solutions, but they're outside of this point, which is marked by this Z nut or nadi. The third space, the third section is when all solutions, when there's solutions within the region of interest marked by the reference point, which we use hypervolume for, which is this crisscrossed area, as you can see on the diagram. So also in the performance space, we have the runtime profile. This is based on a set of performance targets, which can be linear, logarithmic, or nonlinear. These are essentially just a set of target points, which are a set of target indicator values, which you want the algorithm to reach. And so the runtime profile describes a portion of these targets reached by an algorithm during an algorithm run. On the left here, you see on the x-axis, we have number of evaluations, and then on the y-axis, the ICMOP performance indicator. And then on the right, you see the runtime profile where we have the proportion of targets reached on the y-axis. And you see this runs from 0 to 1. Here it's 0.7, but it's in reality it runs to 1. The main point of this for the study is the area under the curve, which is a good measure for analyzing the anytime performance of an algorithm. So finally, in the background, we have constraint handling techniques. These are an algorithm's method of handling infeasible solutions. Examples we used in this study are constraint domination principle, CDP, which treats feasible solutions as always better than infeasible solutions. We then have penalty, which is fairly straightforward. It just adds a static penalty to the objective values. We then have improved epsilon, which is an adaptive epsilon feasibility, and then stochastic ranking, which stochastically balances the effective participants. Now to the methodology. We have 3 steps in our methodology. First is select a set of hard problems. We then build a CHT selector using the features described. We then evaluate with leave one problem out cross-validation. So step 1, we gather a large set of problems from the domain. So these are constraint multi-objective optimization problems, and we have varying dimensions of these problems. We use 2, 3, 5, 10, and 30 dimensions. And we have this resulted in 375 problems total. We then used algorithm runs. So for this, we used SKUI2, which is a multi-objective evolutionary algorithm. And we computed the area under the curve for each of the problems. We then computed the difficulty for each problem. This, as you see on the bottom right, is 1 minus the area under the curve. So it's this area above the curve. We then selected the 20 most difficult problems to perform a hard problem set. Okay, CHT selection is step 2. So the question we ask is, given a problem offline, can we determine the best constraint handling technique? And this is using machine learning. So for explainability, we decided to use a decision tree, with the inputs being the constraint multi-objective optimization features for each of the problems, and the labels being the best performing CHT on the problem. The base algorithm used was SKUI2, and we applied 4 constraint handling techniques, which I mentioned earlier, to this algorithm. And so later on in the talk, it's important to note the labels we used in the study. So CDP is 0, penalty is 1, improved epsilon is 2, and stochastic ranking is 3. So for cross-validation is step 3, where we use leave one problem out cross-validation for all the 20 hard problems. A prediction is considered correct if the selector chooses from a set of the best problems, or these set of the best problems, best CHTs, sorry. And this best set includes the best and also the ties for best. And the ties were computed using Man-Whitney U test. Now to the results. So these are our results. So on the left, you see the problems, the 20 hard problems. These are ranked from highest difficulty back to lowest difficulty. You can see the number of dimensions, D. It's mostly towards the higher end of our range. So reminder, the range went from 2 to 30. And we see here only 5 and above were included, but mostly 10 and 30. So to the prediction column, we have the decision tree prediction for each of the problems. And if this is contained within the set noted in the actual column, then the prediction is considered correct. And for this, we had 19 out of 20 correct, which is 95%. We then trained on all of the 20 problems to give us a decision tree. We started out with the default of 10 tree depth, which gave us a big tree which we couldn't understand. And so we tried to reduce this tree depth while keeping the cross-validation score still high. And we were able to reduce it to a tree depth of 3 without impacting performance, which gave us the following 3 features, which is F-range coefficient, this local non-dominance average random walk, and a correlation feature. So this gives us a good understanding of when each of the constraint handling techniques can be used. So to the discussion. We had 3 contributions. A methodology for selecting hard CMOPs. The second was a methodology for landscape-aware selection of constraint handling techniques, which we got 95% accuracy on. And the third is insights into the features characterizing CMOPs, which we got from the decision tree. In future work, we'd like to try switching constraint handling techniques online, so dynamically switching between constraint handling techniques, and then to extend to full algorithm selection. So not just between constraint handling techniques, but between different algorithms. Thank
you. Thank you, Jordan. Do we have any questions?
The tree that you produced at the end is indeed pretty compact and seems understandable. Does it make sense to you? I mean, do you like what it says?
The features are quite mathematical in their construction, so they don't make a great deal of direct sense, but we understand them basically. So this F-range coefficient feature, it computes the what do you call it, the coefficients of the linear regression model, sorry, and then takes each of the coefficients as a feature. This local non-dominance one is a random walk feature. So we conduct a random walk through the decision space.
I mean, they don't mean much to me because I don't know, I don't understand this problem domain, but you presumably do. That's why I'm curious if they mean something to you.
To a certain degree, beyond that, they're mathematical constructs.
Okay. So when you do the tenfold cross validation or whatever fold you did, you get similar trees each time?
Yes, we check this, and the features which are contained in the trees are pretty similar.
Okay, that's reassuring, I guess. All right, thanks.
I have one question. So you checked, so you made your study on difficult problems. Do you have any feeling yet on the generalization of maybe these 3 or results to this difficult problem? Have you tried that? Do you have any insight?
This is a good question, and no, we haven't, but we will be doing this. We were discussing this last week, actually, about testing on all the 375 problems, which should be easier. It should be correct, because what you see in these problems is they often, algorithms perform very similarly on them. So it should be an easy selection task.
Maybe just a remark, not from this problem area, but from other areas. If you do research on specific problems, at least in my case, it turned out the results were very sensitive on the selection of problems. So you just change a few problems and you get different results. So maybe just for the future pay attention to that? So how sensitive is your methodology to small changes in the problem set?
Thanks.
Any more questions? If not, I have one maybe a bit related to this. Yeah, obviously you used NSGA2 as the algorithm that you evaluated on here. We heard the other day on a lecture by your Japanese colleague that other algorithms are out there which perform better in some specific cases, like NSGA3 and others as well. Why did you start with NSGA2? Is it some specific reason? Is it just practical computational difficulty or something?
Firstly, it's very practical. I mean, it's the classic algorithm in multi-objective optimization. Secondly, we have an implementation for it in Python, so it's practical. But it's also, you can tap on different constraint handling techniques pretty easily with it. So we had 4 ones. One of them wasn't even designed for NSGA2, but we were able to adapt it to this algorithm. So.
But these things do not hold for NSGA3, the successor to NSGA2. So also being, usable in this sense, being implemented in a library that you could use it. How come that you started with the older version, let's say, the classic?
So NSGA3 is better designed for higher dimension, a higher number of objectives.
Okay.
So it's more for a many objective. It's more of a many objective algorithm, so 3 and above. But NSGA2 is shown to work better on 2 objective often.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, thank you, Jordan, again. And we have the next presentation by Fatime Hassad and Mateusz Puka. We'll talk about a critical perspective on MNAR data. All right, I have no last time.
Thanks for the introduction, and please excuse my voice. I've got a little bit sick, but I'll do my best to be clear. My name is Fatime, and I'm going to present our current research on imputation techniques, especially for missing not at random data. To start, I should say why missing data matters. Missing data is a significant problem across various domains, such as healthcare, engineering, finance, and so on. It may occur when particular entries in a data set are unrecorded, incomplete, or correct. But the consequences are really important. It may lead to bias, reduced statistical power, and complicated analysis. This will be really critical in domains like healthcare, which the missingness may be life impacting. We have 3 different types of missing data. The first category is missing completely at random. In this category, the missingness is independent of both observed and unobserved variables. Imagine that in a laboratory, a sensor cannot record occasionally, so the missingness is independent of other variables. The second category is missing at random, which means missingness depends only on observed variables, not on the missing data itself. For instance, in a survey, female may refuse to report their age. So the missing data age is directly related to the other variable, gender. And the last category, and the most important one, is missing not at random, which means the missingness depends on the missing value itself or other unobserved variables. For instance, wealthier individuals are less likely to report their properties. So the missingness depends on the value itself. And this is the most important types of missing data because it is least explored and most difficult one. Because the missingness itself carries information and there are few benchmarks and evaluation methods that are working on MNAR. Also, advanced models like GANs or transformers are not always robust to MNAR scenario. So there are three key gaps. The lack of methods designed specifically for missing dot and random data, the lack of data sets and generators, and incomplete reporting of missingness rates and evaluation standards. But how do researchers trying to deal with missing data? There are two main strategies. The first one is deletion, which means deleting the row or column which contains the missing data. And the second one is imputation, which means filling in the missing value. We have four categories in imputation. Statistical imputation methods like mean, median, mode, and so on, which are simple, fast, and easy to implement, but they may distort the distribution. The second category is machine learning methods like KNN and SVM, which can capture feature dependencies and can handle nonlinear patterns. But they may fail for MNAR scenario, and they are computationally costly in compared to statistical ones. The third category is deep learning methods like variational autoencoders or GANs and transformers and so on. They can handle complex and nonlinear patterns, and also they can handle a high rate of missingness, but they are computationally expensive and they may overfit if data is limited. And they often not tested on MNAR scenario. And the last category are ensemble approaches like meta-regression or MIP, which combines the strengths of multiple imputation techniques. So they have a more robust, more stable performance, but they are mostly validated on missing completely at random or missing at random. And MNAR is somehow unexplored in this category. Another key question is how to generate missing data to test these methods. I can number three strategies. The first one is using artificial rules by removing extreme values, for instance, or using stochastic masking, or using missing data generators like libraries, for instance, mDataGen, which support for some scenarios, different scenarios, such as missing based on own values and so on, or using domain-inspired simulation. I mean, encoding context-specific patterns, like knowing the knowledge of the real world, for instance, dropouts in the healthcare field. So by exploring these limitations, gaps, and this study, we propose to go toward a framework, and the goal is to have a unified and pluggable framework for evaluation of missing data handling methods. This framework should have three main components. The first one is MNAR data generators, which should be domain-informed, probabilistic, and reproducible for simulating missingness patterns. The second one is imputation engines. The goal is to have a modular environment for testing statistical, machine learning, deep learning, and ensemble approaches. And the last one is evaluation suite to have a direct and indirect matrices together. For instance, root mean square error, or downstream predictive performance to handle downstream predictive performance tasks like accuracy and so on. Such a framework would bring us several benefits, like reproducibility, by using common benchmarks for fair comparison. Also, It leads to realism by using domain-specific MNAR patterns, which are closer to real-world data, and generalization by having a framework which can handle all kinds of missingness. To conclude, I should say that MNAR is the most realistic but least explored type of missingness, and we identified 3 critical gaps. First, lack of missing not at random specific imputation methods. Second, limited data sets and generators for missing not at random, and incomplete reporting and evaluation standards. So we propose a solution for this, which is a unified framework that have a data generation, imputation, and evaluation together. And the outcome is a more robust and producible approach with realistic missingness types and fair evaluation for missing data research. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would be happy to hear your insights and questions.